Hi, this is Chris, and I support the Comics Alternative on Patreon. Thank you, Derek and Andy.
This is the Comics Alternative, episode 151, a look at the September Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And on this episode, we're going to be looking at the September Previews catalog. But before we get into that, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, and they'll take care of all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials will be for 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off cover price, but often you will find discounts that are more impressive than that.
That's right, and since this is our monthly previews show, you can be certain to find many of the things we talk about today in this episode available for deeper discounts than the usual great discounts you get at DCB Service. So check that out once those September orders are up.
That's right. They're going to be up soon, so check out the website, dcbservice.com. You can go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs, and after you do get your comics there, please be sure to drop them a line and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
Andy, before we get into the previews catalog, we should welcome the latest podcast patron to the Comics Alternative family of supporters. This is Christopher Baird. He became a podcast patron this past week. I don't know if you remember this, but Christopher sent us an email a few months ago. This is, after you took that sabbatical, and then you came back and you said, I don't know if I was missed or not. Well, that following week, Chris sent us an email and said he missed you.
I like how your impression of me was so pathetic and needy, which is exactly accurate.
Oh, so apparently Chris didn't think that you were pathetic and needy because he welcomed you wholeheartedly back on the show. And as a result, he eventually became a podcast patron. So he must be really excited that you're back doing the episodes.
Well, then maybe I should go away some more. How's that?
Okay, but then if it means more patrons for us, that'd be great. But you'd have to come back each time with a bigger bang.
Yeah, that's true.
So, in fact, you could be the Wayne Newton, or maybe the Liberace of comics podcast. You could become more garish and more extravagant with each return.
Okay, I think I'm already at one of those two. I won't say which.
Okay, well, maybe that could be a topic for one of our special episodes that we do for podcast patrons.
Okay.
We can do that. But Christopher, thank you very much for becoming the latest of our patrons. You joined the noble ranks of Prathik Thomas, Art Bowser, Daniel White, Christopher Michael, Paul Lay, Sal Good Sam, Michael Nohale, Tom Matthews, Don Witzel, Simon Brilsby, David Campbell, and Rainer Koshnick.
Yeah, the list is building.
That's right. And, curiously enough, Chris becoming our latest podcast patron leads us into the viewer communication or listener communication that we've had over the past week. Because a couple of days before he became a podcast patron, Christopher sent me an email in response to that interview that I did last week with Jeremy Baum. He said, "Hi, Derek. I just wanted to compliment you on how well you conducted the subject interview. A lesser interviewer probably would not have been able to elicit such interesting responses from Jeremy or direct the interview so successfully. Also, as someone who has been listening from the beginning, I am frequently impressed by the quality and content of your podcasts. There are occasions when I'll look at the title or synopsis of a podcast and think, that doesn't sound interesting. Yet it always does. I didn't think I would like the most recent podcast, a roundtable discussion on teaching comics, but I found it informative and entertaining. Thank you for the effort and enthusiasm that you and your collaborators devote to the show. Sincerely, Chris Baird."
Well, that is nice.
That is very nice.
Most of it's, directed to you.
Yeah.
So you should feel good about that.
I do, and I feel good as well that Chris decided to become one of our patrons, so that's great.
Yeah.
So thank you, Chris, for that. We had a couple of interesting tweets directed at us over the past several days. One came in a few days ago, and this was a response to last week's show, which Gene did with me. And on that show, we did a discussion of the 6 voyages of Lone Sloan. And one of our listeners, Carl Winthrop, tweeted us, "What debt do you think Fraction Ward's Odyssey has to Lone Sloan?"
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. And I responded, I'm not really sure. And it's interesting because I didn't even think about that when Gene and I were doing our review of the 6 voyages of Lone Sloan. But next time we have Matt Fraction on the podcast, we should ask him that.
Yeah. I'm curious about a couple of different levels of influence, because I do think that if Fraction himself is not influenced by that work, I think Christian Ward's art certainly is.
Right. That makes sense to me.
And I'm also wondering, about other comic series based on, or kind of that reference, epic poetry like the Odyssey and the Iliad, especially Jack Katz's The First Kingdom.
Right.
Which also has other kind of structural similarities to Odyssey. So So I have several questions along those lines.
We had another tweet, and this is one that I forwarded to, or at least I alerted our sponsor, DCB Service, about. And these are the kind of things I really like to hear. This is from Alex Inkster. He goes by Alex7INK on Twitter, and he says, "Thanks to the 2 guys with PhDs, I discovered DCBService.com, which is amazing. If you are a big comic collector, I suggest checking them out."
Well, great. We are earning our keep.
So thank you, Alex, for that. And if our other listeners out there, if you are starting to pay attention to DCB Service, or you've started to use them, then do what Alex did. Let us know, and then we can let DCB Service know. So if there's ever a time where they are considering dropping us as a sponsor, we can go, well, what about Alex Inkster and these other listeners?
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
So I want to thank all you guys for getting in touch with us. We do like to hear from you, whether it's through Twitter or Facebook or email or any number of means. We appreciate the correspondence.
Hey, you on the street.
Okay,
Yep.
So you want to get into this month's previews catalog?
Yes.
Now, this is going to be interesting because, setting a little context, I have a copy of previews in front of me, but you weren't able to get either a hard copy or a digital in time for this recording.
That's right. So what I am going to be doing is just kind of guessing what's coming out.
Okay.
I'm just going to shoot, like, I'm going to like, I'm going to imagine that, like, all the kind of great lost comics, or comics that people have thought, they'll never see, are going to come out in November.
Well, some of that is actually in this month's catalog, and there were two titles that I'm thinking about.
Yep.
But it's interesting because several months ago I was in a similar situation where you had a copy of the catalog. I think the only thing I had was an order form from Previews World, and I was clueless as to what you were seeing in the catalog.
Right. But just to, alleviate our listeners' worries, I'm not going to guess. I am actually looking at some information that I've gathered together from various sources. I may not be able to get everything, and I haven't seen many of the covers and images that are in the previews, but I should have enough to make do.
Okay. And if you need for me to describe to you any of the art, the covers, or read any solicits, just let me know.
Yep. And if you ever had the urge to gaslight me under any circumstances, this is the time that you can do that now.
Okay.
Like, just say, that's not in here, or what are you looking at, or did you see this? I'll be like, no.
Yeah, I can accuse you of being whacked out on crack or something.
Yeah.
So, starting in Dark Horse, what is something that caught your interest?
From what I can gather, I don't start till pretty deep into the Dark Horse section. So, if you have something early on, go ahead.
Okay, well, let me ask you. Do you have any page number indicators of the information you're looking at?
Yeah. My first thing is page 61.
Okay, so I wanted to highlight a solicit before that is on page 44, and this is issue number 1 of 5, Joe Gollum, Occult Detective. This is written by Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden, with art by Patrick Reynolds. And I remember hearing about Joe Gollum and the Drowning City, which is an illustrated novel. Did you read that or know about that when it came out a few years ago?
No.
Okay. Well, apparently this miniseries is based on that illustrated novel that Mignola and Golden did together.
Okay, so is this an adaptation of that novel, but with a different title?
No, from what I can gather, it kind of picks up where the illustrated novel leaves off.
Okay.
And it's not a graphic novel, and I haven't seen this, but I've read descriptions of it. But it's prose fiction with illustrations.
Right. I've read some of the Hellboy prose novels that Golden and Mignola collaborated on.
So it's like that,
or like the Lost Army and so on. Yeah. So that's what I was imagining when you said that. So
yeah.
But that's interesting that character debuted in that form and is now making the transition to comics.
Right, and they're describing this as a tie-in.
Okay.
So now apparently in the original Joe Gollum in the Drowning City, back in the 1920s, New York was flooded, and that flood has become the new normal for the Big Apple, in that the first 2 or 3 stories of Manhattan become underwater, and you have the main character Joe Gollum, who is this, I don't know, kind of a Sam Spade character. It strikes me as kind of a detective noir kind of figure, which makes sense, noir with Mignola's type of work. And he gets into various adventures. So I guess it follows up from that illustrated novel. That's all I know about it. I don't know if I'll get it, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing I have in Dark Horse is on page 50.
Okay.
And I have to say, this is the thing that, well, I was about to say the thing that I'm most excited about in this month's previews, but then there's another candidate that's also in the Dark Horse section, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in a moment or two. But this is another volume, the next new volume in the EC Archive series, and this is volume 1 of Panic,
if I remember right, Panic was it takes me a little bit to scroll to where I need to go. But anyway, Panic was Panic, like Al Feldstein's attempt at a Mad book, so that while Kurtzman had Mad, Feldstein, one of the other key editors and creators at EC, went to do his own humor book and created Panic. Is that right?
Exactly. In fact, Panic has been billed as the only authorized ripoff of Mad, because there were so many of them that tried to play on the success of what Mad Comic and then later on the magazine did. But Panic was actually from EC Comics, and Kurtzman, is on record of saying in so many words that he felt a little ripped off for this. But now Panic didn't last for that many issues, and I think they'll probably only go to 2 volumes. But this is great, and one of the things that Panic was most noted for is in its very first issue, and how's this a way to get started with a new comic series? Panic #1 caused the title to be banned in Massachusetts. Because of that infamous Will Elder adaptation of The Night Before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
It's the one that shows, I think it's one of the final panels, Santa Claus in his sleigh, and on the back is a bumper sticker. The back of the sleigh is a bumper sticker that says "Just Divorced," and a lot of people at the time were incensed that Santa Claus, who's this revered figure, a saint, has on the back of his sleigh a sign that says "Just Divorced."
That's always that. There's so many things to pick out of what Bill Elder was doing anyway, right?
Right.
All the chicken fat that's going on in there to single that out is interesting. Yeah. I've only ever seen a couple of issues of Panic reprinted in the was it the stuff that Gemstone did? I think when they did the individual issues of the EC books.
That would make sense because they used to have the original. Well, the original publisher of the latest incarnation of those archives.
Yeah, I can't remember who the publisher was of those who did the actual individual issue reprints. But anyway, I always thought Panic was an interesting contrast to Mad because you see the real difference between Harvey Kurtzman's sensibility and Al Feldstein. Mm-hmm.
Well, now with this new EC archive coming out, you're going to be seeing quite a bit more of that difference. And so I'm glad that they're doing this because Panic is not one of those titles you usually think of when you think of EC Comics.
Right.
So where did you say you go in the Dark Horse section?
61.
Ah. Okay.
So is that where you're going to next?
Yes.
Now I apologize. It's hard for me to scroll through the various documents I'm looking at, but I'm curious, and again, I haven't seen anything about this yet, other than a little information in the text solicit. But Kingsway West by Greg Pak and Mirko Kolak, a new miniseries that is starting in November. After 13 years in prison, a Chinese gunslinger named Kingsway Law just wants to find his wife, but in a fantastical American Old West crackling with magic monsters and racist vigilantes, trouble just won't leave him be, and in this case, trouble is a woman with a magic sword who needs his help. So I like Greg Pak's work a lot. I mean, he's and I like to see him doing creator-owned stuff on top of his Marvel and DC work. So. And this is a Western, but with supernatural elements, and I like The Sixth Gun, so I'll be on that. And it also deals with issues of race.
Mm-hmm. It looks interesting. We've seen quite a number of these genre mashups, and this one, when I read the solicit, it reminded me of doing with the Western what Fatale did with Noir. And that is, mix in that kind of horror, supernatural, monster angle.
Sure.
So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
Yep.
Now, if you turn the page, I mentioned another title that I'm very excited about in this month's catalog, another Dark Horse. This is the one that I was referring to. This is on page 62.
Yep. The
hardcover collection, Gilbert Hernandez's Girl Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that is exciting news that Dark Horse is reprinting this. Now, how long has it been since Girl Crazy originally appeared?
I think it was 1997.
Wow. So we're looking at almost 20 years.
Yeah, but something similar happened with Grip: The Strange World of Men.
Right.
In that was a Vertigo title. Girl Crazy was, I believe, a Dark Horse title originally. But several months ago, Dark Horse came out with a hardcover collection of Grip, which was the first time that had been collected. Now, I think Girl Crazy has been previously collected. As far as I know, though, I think it's paperback. This is going to be hardcover, and it's also, like Grip: The Strange World of Man, going to be in black and white. But this is really good. So we have, Hernandez, of course, he continues to do what he does with Love and Rockets, and then other works coming out through Fantagraphics. He's had a couple original graphic novels coming out in the past few years from Drawn and Quarterly, Bumperhead, and then before that, Marble Season. But he also has work with Dark Horse.
Yep.
So this is going to be interesting. For those who aren't familiar with Girl Crazy, the solicit reads, Kitten, Maribel, and Gabby are childhood friends celebrating their 16th birthday, but someone's missing. Their fourth friend, Una, is imprisoned in Tijuana, so the girls set out to give Una the ultimate birthday gift, freedom, even if it means taking on an entire city.
Yeah, that sounds like a Gilbert Hernandez book.
Yes, it is. Or yes, it does. So I'm glad that this is coming out, and this just underscores the fact that I feel strongly that we should have Gilbert back on the show later this year.
Sure, that would be fantastic.
We ought to contact him about that. Because I do know that second book, the second volume of Maria M, has been moved back. The pub date has been moved back on that.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to come out now, but so there you go. Now, that's all I have in Dark Horse. Do you have anything else in Dark Horse?
No, I'm done with Dark Horse.
And I don't go anywhere next until – I don't have anything next until Vertigo.
I just have one other thing. One thing in the DC section in the collected edition, though. I am surprised we're not going to be talking about Frank Miller's Batman the Master Race or whatever it's going to be called.
That's actually on the cover of this.
Right. I know it's a big deal, and I'm curious about that. Mm-hmm. But I just want to kind of mention in passing something that I'm excited about, which is that and this is on page 122, that DC is finally getting around to reprinting Garth Ennis and John McCrae's the Demon series that they did. This is some of my favorite Garth Ennis stuff, and it is in Garth Ennis and John McCrae's Hitman is being reprinted in consecutive volumes now finally as well. But to see them going back and getting their earlier that pair's earlier work on the Demon out is really good, because this is a fun, crazy, just nuts book when it just seemed like that DC was letting a lot of creators do a lot of stuff like without a lot of kind of editorial interference. And so Ennis's Demon books are I wouldn't necessarily call it a lost classic, but it's something that's definitely needed to be reprinted. Especially also because you get the early appearances of Hitman in that series as well. But there's some stuff with the haunted tank in that series that I really loved.
Yeah, that caught my attention as well, but I wasn't going to bring it up. But
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So then I go to Vertigo.
And we have the next installment of new Vertigo titles, 4 more, just as we had last month. This month we have Jacked #1 with Eric Kripke, art by John Higgins, and Red Thorn #1, written by David Bailey, with art by Megan Hetrick. Slash and Burn, Cy Spencer, written by art by Max Dunbar and Andre Parks. And then the fourth one is Unfollow #1. This is Rob Williams with art by Michael Dowling.
Yeah.
So, is there one of these, or maybe a couple of these 4, that really stand out to you?
You know what? Like all of the new Vertigo series that are coming out in the coming months, I will get at least the first issues to see how they're doing. And you know, of these, I will be curious to see how long I stick with them. Jacked is written by Eric Kripke, who's one of the creators of Supernatural. I don't watch that show, but I have a load of students who just love that show. So I'm not sure, you know, how that one will go. It's a 6-issue miniseries. With Red Thorn, I'm a fan of Megan Hetrick's art. I like her work on things she's done before, especially on that recent Bodies series that was written by was it Cy Spencer, who writes Slash and Burn now. But the one that has probably the most intriguing premise to me is Unfollow, which is this idea that a dying social media mogul leaves his billions to be split evenly between 140 random people, or however many of them are still alive at the moment of his death. That sounds like a good series that can introduce long-term stories with, you know, a core group of characters, but you have 140 potential characters in that book that you could do little, you know, single issue stories on some of them as well. And so I like that concept. That also seems to be the one of these 4 that would probably most easily transition into a television series. Yeah, which I know is Vertigo's goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it does seem to have a lot of potential. I mean, just the topic, the premise, I think, makes it a very timely title. Maybe more so, especially in contrast to Jacked, because Jacked, even though that does seem interesting, this solicit reads that Josh Jaffe, a neurotic family man, midlife crisis, buys an online smart pill to increase his focus and jolt him out of his slump. But to Josh's surprise, the pill gives him incredible strength and power. But its cost is that it's extremely addictive. This irreverent and brutally realistic story examines both the mighty highs and humiliating lows of being a real-life superhero. That is a premise that is not unique by any stretch of the imagination. It could be a great title, and it sounds interesting. I want to check it out. I don't know how timely or engaging it will be. In other words, it doesn't have that spark of difference that Unfollow does.
Yeah, it almost seems like it could be Vertigo's Our Man. You know, that just do an updated version of Our Man.
Yeah. And unless I am forgetting something, of these 4 solicits of the new titles in the Vertigo section, Jacked is the only one that they're describing as a limited series.
Right.
Now, Slash and Burn they're describing as ongoing, and I'm assuming that Unfollow and Red Thorn may be ongoing as well. They don't say.
Right, but I would assume, especially with the premise of Unfollow, it would be hard. I mean, I guess anything could be done as a miniseries, but that one seems to be the most likely to be an ongoing series. And Slash and Burn, I just don't get a sense of how to read that. You know, what to expect with that series, since you've got on one hand, wait, no, it's Red Thorn is the one I'm thinking of. Red Thorn is the one I kind of had a hard time wrapping my head around, because on one hand you've got, a girl who's drawing somehow come to life, who has just stumbled across her one true love, and then thousands of miles below those streets, a demigod plots his escape from the prison where he's been held for nearly 2,000 years. Those seem to be two different stories, right? So I'm really curious to see what that, and the solicit also says it's tied to Scottish mythology. So I'm just really curious to see what is how those two seemingly different premises are going to come together into a single story.
Yeah, I do have to say that of these 4 solicits in Vertigo, the 2 that either didn't tell me much or confused me the most were Red Thorn and also Slash and Burn. Mm-hmm. Although I will give them a try. And, you and I have talked about the possibility of later in the year, maybe in late November or December, doing a publisher spotlight on Vertigo, looking at these, 12 total new titles that are going to be coming out between October and December.
Yeah. It really feels like Vertigo's publishing strategy here is a kind of, I don't know, reality show survival method.
That's a good way of putting it.
They're going to throw these 12 series to the wolves and see who gets out alive at the end. There's some of these are probably, the Twilight Children, for example, from last month probably would exist regardless, but seeing as how Vertigo doesn't seem to be giving a long leash to a lot of its new series at all. I'm just wondering, even when you said, some of these are 6-issue miniseries and some seem to be ongoing, I wonder how many of these ongoing series will last beyond 7 issues.
Yeah. Because right now there's not much going on, quote unquote, long term at Vertigo. I mean, in this month's catalog, we have solicited Astro City number 29, and then American Vampire second cycle number 11. So those are the 2 titles that have been around the longest, and that's really not that long.
No, and it says with American Vampire second cycle, number 11 is the final issue of the second cycle.
Right.
So the third cycle begins in 2016.
Yeah, so this may be... It's funny because there was quite a long hiatus between the first and second cycle, and I'd even thought that at one point American Vampire wasn't going to come back. But this, I guess, is poised to be their longest-running series now, because American Vampire started in when? 2010? Maybe 2009?
Yeah. Yeah, there was an earlier episode where I counted the number of issues there have been so far.
Of American Vampire. Okay,
American Vampire, and I can't remember what number I gave, but we may be, if you include the miniseries, maybe something like 35 issues or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, so I don't know what's... we may end up in a place pretty soon that other than, we are going to end up a place that other than Astro City and The Wolf Among Us, everything else is going to be in the single digits.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the thing about Astro City, that has maybe a relatively small, but I think very dedicated following, that if Vertigo, for whatever reason, chose to pull the plug on it, Busiek could probably go to some place like Image, which he had been publishing originally, Astro City, and do it that way.
Yeah, that book will find a home.
Yeah. I have something else, or a couple of other things in the Vertigo section. I don't know if you do.
Yeah. I look at the trades that they have that they're offering.
Yeah. Are you on looking at page 136?
I might be.
Okay, that's right. Well, two that caught my attention is Flinch Book 1 is coming out in trade paperback,
Right.
and this is the first time that DC's kind of weird horror Flinch anthology has been collected. So Book 1 is coming out as a trade paperback, but I think even more notable on that same page is iZombie Omnibus coming out. This is going to be a hardbound edition. So this includes the entire 28-issue run of iZombie. I would guess that had it not been for the CW series, we would not see this omnibus edition.
Oh no, we wouldn't.
Because we had the trade editions.
Yeah, we had the trade, and especially considering that Chris Robertson had a pretty significant falling out with DC once iZombie ended. That they probably wouldn't, and yet now it seems like iZombie is the model by which DC is, or DC Vertigo is selecting its properties.
Now, I think we've talked about this on the show before. You've seen iZombie episodes, right, on CW?
Just the beginning of the series. I haven't watched deep into it, and I wanted to. I really liked what I saw. I just got behind.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I kind of liked well enough what I saw. I think, the first 2, maybe 3 episodes, but not beyond the third. Mm-hmm. I thought it was okay. One of the things that kind of annoyed me about it from the very beginning was, and this is probably just a idiosyncratic peeve of mine, it plays upon the fact at the very beginning that it was a comic and then now it's a TV series, because you can see that in the introduction, you see, I guess that's Allred's work, that kind of you see the comic book part of it, and then it becomes real life horror, drama, comedy. And my philosophy of things like that is let the adaptation, either on film or on television, stand on its own. You don't need to draw attention to the fact that it had once been a comic book. I felt the same way with American Splendor. I mean, I really liked that film.
Wow.
But at the very beginning, when they showed the cartoony comic P-Car, and then we had the live film, that made more sense to me, because the character of Harvey P-Car, is obviously a comics writer, so that would make sense. I much more appreciate something like we find in Ghost World, where there's really no indication at all that this started off as a comic.
I like that idea. I like when that little nod happens. I think American Splendor does it for a wide variety of important thematic reasons, one of which is, just kind of dealing with the subject of autobiography in general, and, and how Harvey P-Car, the character, is mediated through all these different forms, whether it's the drawn Harvey P-Car or the Paul Giamatti Harvey P-Car or the Harvey P-Car, the real, quote unquote, real one.
Right. And
so I like that, but again, like I said, I like that iZombie did it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I don't have as much problem with American Splendor, because that makes sense to me. iZombie, I contextualize it by saying it's an idiosyncratic peeve of mine. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what you're saying is you hated the Batman television show, for example. Like you are on record now saying Batman television show sucked.
That was a different time.
Okay. Yeah. One thing before we leave that page also includes the Strange Sports Stories trade paperback, which collects that 4-issue anthology miniseries. I never read any of that, so I might get that trade, because there is a host of talent in that I like. Mm-hmm. But Flinch is an interesting series, because that series was loaded with some really great creators doing some interesting short stories that I didn't expect to see get reprinted. I think there's only 16 issues of that series, if I remember right. So we may get two books.
Right. That would make sense. Because this first book includes the first 8 issues.
Yeah. But if they're going through and reprinting a lot of those anthology series, one of the things I'd really like to see DC do then is put out a couple volumes of the pre-Vertigo anthology series Wasteland. I don't know if you remember that. It was written by John Ostrander and Del Close, and I think it's probably the only comic stories that Del Close ever wrote. But if anybody is kind of familiar with the history of comedy, especially the history of Second City and Saturday Night Live, Del Close was one of the key figures kind of behind the scenes at both of those places, and is one of the real innovators of improv comedy. And so he wrote this comic series with John Ostrander, and they had a kind of rotating group of 5 or so artists that ended up changing up as things went along. But Don Simpson, David Lloyd, Bill Messner-Loebs. I'm trying to think of who else. I'm probably blanking on some of the more significant artists that were in that series. Drew the stories, and some they were usually kind of weird horror short stories, but there were very often Del Close told also autobiographical stories about his experience in 1950s road company performances in the South, and bit parts in B horror movies and stuff like that. And so it was a neat series, and I think that only lasted 16 issues too. I'd really like to see DC put out a couple volumes of that.
When did that come out? 1980s?
Yeah. It was around that time when DC, before DC did Vertigo, but when they were doing the kind of direct market comics that would have suggested for mature audiences on the cover, so that, and this was kind of post, or around I guess around the time that Alan Moore was working at DC too. So not necessarily post Watchmen, but also kind of current with Watchmen, and DC was trying a lot of stuff like that, and so it was an interesting experiment that DC did.
Well, maybe they will come out with that now that they've heard, because we know the people at DC listen to our podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they know that there's an audience out there for this.
Yep. And then they say, those two guys with PhDs are tastemakers. Let's get on this. You guys know about this Wasteland series? Let's do it. So that's the conversation that's happening in the DC offices right now.
Or after this episode goes up.
Yeah,
especially.
Well, right now, meaning when the people who are listening to this episode are hearing that, they can imagine that concurrently with their listening is a conversation going on in the DC offices in California.
Yeah. Maybe we should redub ourselves the Tastemakers. Well, that's all that I have in the DC Vertigo section. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it. I go to IDW, I guess.
Yeah. I don't have much in IDW, but there are at least a couple things I wanted to highlight, and I'm sure that you're going to be highlighting at least one of the things that I'm highlighting.
Yeah.
I have something on page 170.
Okay, I start at 172, so go ahead with 170.
Yeah, and the 170 is one in an endless series of IDW's artist editions that I'm not going to get, but if I had the money, this would be one that I would definitely want to get. This is Graham Ingles' EC Stories Artist Edition. Looks good, can't afford it, so let's move on.
Yep.
And then there's 172, as you mentioned.
With Our Expanding Universe by Alex Robinson, which is, as the solicit says, a spiritual sequel to Alex Robinson's box office Poison. It's been 15 years since the young cast of that beloved drama have graced the stage. Now, Our Expanding Universe introduces another Robinson ensemble to explore how time can transform a group of friends. So, if I'm reading that right, it's not the same characters as in Box Office Poison, but it's going to have a, I guess, similar feel in terms of having an ensemble cast and so on. Yeah, it's been a long time since I read Box Office Poison, so I'll be curious to see how our Expanding Universe goes.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And honestly, it's like you. I can't remember much about my reading experience of Box Office Poison outside of the experience of liking it. Mm-hmm. You know, you asked me about details outside of the ensemble cast. I really couldn't tell you much, but I'm excited about this. I liked Box Office Poison. I liked Tricked. I never got around to reading, I guess, his last graphic novel, Too Cool to Be Forgotten. Did you read that one?
No, I have it, but I've never read it.
Yeah. So when I saw that Our Expanding Universe is coming out, this is exciting. This is someone that I would really like to get on the podcast for an interview.
Yeah. I think I picked the Too Soon to Be Forgotten. I picked that up in a one of the top shelf sales, and usually what it seems to happen over the last couple of years, I'll load up on those books, and then a handful of them take a while for me to read.
Mm-hmm. Well, get them while they're cheaper.
Yeah, well, that's always a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go to the Yo stuff next, unless you have stuff before that.
Nope, that's where I go as well.
And that's page 176 and 177.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the first things in the Yo section is Horror by Heck.
I love that title.
Yes, an anthology of horror comics created by Don Heck, who is more normally known as a superhero artist, like on Iron Man and The Flash and so on. And here, though, he did a load of pre-code horror comics.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm not looking at the cover right now, but I've looked at the cover of this. I think that I actually at one time had the comic that is featured on the cover of this collection.
The guy with the bullet hole in his forehead?
Yeah.
Wow. And this is part of Yo's Chilling Archives of Horror Comics series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought of Don Heck as being a kind of serviceable, reliable superhero artist. And then seeing a handful of his horror stories in the past, and also seeing some of his war stories, which I also really like. He was doing things that were so significantly different in those that I would not have connected them to the same artist I was familiar with as a superhero artist.
So this is something else that is coming out. And, last month we mentioned at least two other books that are coming out from Yo Books that had that horror feel to it. So there's more coming, but that's not all, because on both page 176 and notably 177, we get more Yo goodness. The second volume of Weird Love, the collected Weird Love, is coming out. This one's subtitled "That's the Way I Like It." So that one will be coming out around the same time. But also, this is interesting, on page 177, Haunted Horror Pre-Code Cover Coloring Book, Volume 1, which means that there's going to be at least a Volume 2.
One would only hope. I definitely want this. Does it come with crayons?
I don't think so.
No. I would like to see the color crayons that Craig would pick for this. So,
this is interesting in that over the past month, my wife has just started to do this kind of adult coloring, and
it's a weird new trend.
Oh, really?
I'm seeing it happen. Yeah, I've seen it happening a lot. I know people, colleagues who have coloring parties now.
Wow. See, when I saw this solicit, I'm thinking Christmas present.
It's apparently therapeutic.
Yep.
And I saw one of the things I wish I had gotten when I was at Ohio State at their art museum bookstore, but you can get this on Amazon, is the Benedict Cumberbatch coloring book.
Really?
So if you know anybody who is a big Benedict fan.
Okay, the female members of my family.
Yeah, so now I've given you an idea for a Christmas and or birthday present.
Yeah, where the problem with that is I'd have to get one for both Amanda and Zoe, and once they start coloring that, it's as if I didn't even exist.
Okay.
Which, I could be okay with, I guess. Now, I only have one other thing in IDW.
Yeah, I guess I go to the next page.
Same here, probably the same thing. Andre the Giant, Closer to Heaven?
Yeah, by Brandon Easton and Dennis Medry.
Right. I find this interesting in that this comes a little more than a year after Box Brown's Andre the Giant. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, because this is also a biography.
Right.
I wonder how this will differ. I mean, outside of the obvious art differences, how this will differ from Brown's.
Yeah. It would. I would guess that maybe the production of those two books kind of overlapped in such a way that, the Box Brown book came out at the point that it was too late to really pull the plug on another one, or that maybe the creators thought they were doing something different enough that the existence of two Andre the Giant comic biographies wouldn't be a problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, this would be an interesting conference paper right here to do a comparative study of the two comics-based biographies of Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
That's something perfect for a pop culture conference because you have the comics aspect, you have the wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like in this issue of previews, wrestling is a kind of theme that runs through many of the different publishers.
You're right.
Or Ultimate Fighting, if you throw Ultimate Fighting in there as well.
I hadn't thought of that as I was going through the catalog, but I'm vaguely recalling now, as you mentioned this, that there are a number of titles that I saw that had that feel to it.
Yes. And I think there was even a series, at least one series that was written by an Ultimate Fighter or co-written. But anyway, I'm curious about this, what the contrast might end up being between these two works.
So I go to Image next.
Yeah, and I got to say now in Image, my sense of what's on what page is completely screwed up. So you may have to guide things through Image, and then if you don't cover something I wanted to mention, we can backtrack if it's necessary. Is that okay?
That's fine. And I know that you're dealing with you have a disadvantage to begin with because you don't have the catalog in front of you. But I think even if you did have the catalog, it would nonetheless be confusing given what Image has been doing in their section of previews for the past several months. I don't know. I do think it's more confusing than otherwise. And I think we mentioned this last month as well. But oh well, it's the way that they've chosen to arrange their information. I think the best way to begin with Image is to talk about their new titles, the number one issues of the new series. I guess the one that's most notable for me is actually their first solicit, and this is on page 182, and you have sample art on pages 183, 184, and 185, and that is Jason Aaron and R.M. Guerra's The Goddamned.
Yeah.
So, and what's notable about that is that this is the same creative team that brought us Scalped, which is one of my favorite titles over the past 15 years or so. Now we have them back, although it's a very different setting and narrative premise than Scalped. It says it's 1,655 years after Eden, and life on Earth has already gone to hell. The world of man is a place of wanton cruelty and wickedness. Prehistoric monsters and Stone Age marauders roam the land. Murder and destruction are the rule of the day. Humankind is a failed experiment. This is life before the flood, the story of man on the verge of his first apocalypse. Welcome to the world of the Goddamned.
Yeah, so this is like a pre-apocalyptic story.
It's before the flood.
Yeah.
So I guess so.
That is this is an interesting concept.
Yeah, and the 3 pages of sample art, which I guess you haven't seen unless you looked at it online.
No.
It's okay. I mean, I love Guerra's art. But there's not enough here to really hook me on this story. What hooks me is the fact that you have Aaron and Guerra together again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But other than that, if this were someone else doing this title, I don't know if I'd probably sample the first issue, but more out of curiosity than anything.
Yeah.
And, I have to admit, okay, I really like Jason Aaron's work, especially his non-superhero stuff. I mean, nothing wrong with the superhero stuff. I just prefer his non-superhero work.
Mm-hmm.
Southern Bastards, if you remember, was one of my top 10 titles of last year. I've cooled on Southern Bastards since then. I mean, I think it's good. I like it, but it doesn't have the same oomph for me as it did, not quite a year ago. So I'm coming to The Goddamned #1 with an interest, but with also, I guess, a cautious interest.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be great. Who knows? But, I mean, I'll give it a try.
Right. Yeah, I feel more hopefulness, though, for The Goddamned, because it does feel like something that is right up Jason Aaron and R.M. Guerra's alley. So I think it has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I told you how I felt about Southern Bastards. I've said that that after those first 4 issues, it kind of became a series I wasn't interested in reading anymore.
Yeah.
Though I do have the rest of the issues. Anything else
about that title
of the new Image series?
Well, okay. On page 186 is a solicit for Monstrous #1, Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda, in their sample art. Okay, I guess, but I don't know. I'll try it, but it doesn't seem exciting to me. What are your thoughts on that?
That's interesting because, again, I can't see it. I was probably going to check it out, even though it does say steampunk meets kaiju, which I
wondered about that.
Which is like, I don't know, chocolate dipped in shit. Let listeners figure out which one was the chocolate and which one's the shit. But I like some of Marjorie Liu's writing, and Sana Takeda. I've seen work on the Marvel stuff. But what I'm really curious about is that Image seems to be doing so many different things to try to kind of get readers into their first issues, and so we've seen quite a few first issues lately that have been double-sized or oversized. I mean, the goddamn number one is 30 pages, for example. And, and in fact, most of the number ones are double-sized.
Right.
But Monstrous is triple-sized. It's 66 pages in that first issue for $4.99. So it's basically, in that first issue, you're getting what you would have gotten in the first 3 issues of a regular series.
That's true. And usually I really like that because, it's more bang for the buck, and it's a way to give more story to get you into that narrative world. But I'll tell you, it doesn't always work. Last week, one of the titles that Gene and I reviewed was, we looked at the first 2 issues of Alice Cott's Wolf, and issue number 1 of Wolf was about 60 pages of story. After 60 pages, I still didn't know a lot of what was going on. And that's one of the topics of conversation that Gene and I had when we discussed Wolf, is that, and not only after that first issue, but even after the second issue, there was still tons of unanswered questions. And so here we have, not quite 90, maybe 80 pages of story so far with Wolf as of last week. And we were much more in the dark with that one than we were with issue number 1 of Americatown, which is a regular sized issue. So, now maybe with Monstrous, it being 66 pages, you'll definitely get more story. I just hope that it's a little more, at least, than what we got in Wolf number 1, even though I liked Wolf number 1 well enough.
Right. I am, I haven't had a lot of experience with a lot of these new number 1s from Image that do the double-sized thing. But so I'll wait and see what comes from these things. But what I wonder about more from a kind of financial standpoint is, does this affect how much does this affect the creator's bottom line? Are they ending up with more, are they hoping that maybe by having a bigger first issue, they're attracting more readers and that'll offset the cut they might be taking if these were, say, the first 3 issues of the series instead?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if this one comes next, but I did think I might check out the Citizen Jack by Sam Humphries and Tommy Patterson.
That does come next. That's on 190.
Yeah, this kind of political satire that is being developed in this series looks like it could be interesting.
Yeah, the solicit does sound worth checking out. It says, every presidential candidate has a skeleton in their closet. Jack Northworthy worships the devil. A scandal-plagued small-town politician, Jack should in no way be president. Kind of reminds us of Trump here.
Except that this guy seems to have actual political experience.
Right, and probably a tad more integrity. But he's got a secret weapon, Marlinspike, a malevolent demon of high ambitions. Together, they're running for president in an outrageous campaign that America will never forget. Hilarity ensues. That's not part of the solicit, by the way. But it does look interesting, and I'm not familiar with the art of Tommy Patterson. It says that he's done Game of Thrones comics, but I like the sample art that I see here.
Okay.
So that's one I think that I would be interested in checking out. But there are a few other number 1 issues from Image, and the 2 others that really stand out to me on page 198 is Dan Waters and Casper Wingegaard's Limbo number 1, and then on page 208 is Mark Miller and Raphael Albuquerque's Huck number 1.
Yeah, so if we wondered what Raphael Albuquerque is going to be doing while American Vampire's on hiatus, this is probably it.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess wrapping up, or I guess he's already wrapped up his own series 8 over Dark Horse. But yeah, now looking at Huck, I know you're not the biggest fan of Mark Miller.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that this is going to be a mini-series, but my guess is this is going to be a mini-series because the past several things we've seen from Miller, especially at Image, have been 4-issue mini-series. There was MPH, which I really liked. Then the Chrononauts, which I think that was also a 4-issue mini-series, correct?
I don't know.
I think. So this is going to be maybe another quick in and out. It looks interesting. I'm curious about the choice of the title and the character, Huck. I mean, are there supposed to be links here to, Twain? Maybe.
I don't think Mark Miller thought that hard about it.
And maybe not.
Was that mean? Was that mean to me?
No.
Did I make? Will I make him feel bad for saying that?
No. Well, he may feel put out that one of the tastemakers.
Tastemakers.
What did I say?
Test.
Oh, jeez.
Testmacher. You're saying Miss Testmacher.
Yes,
from
that's it.
The Superman movie.
He may be upset that one of the tastemakers is dissing him, but
yeah, he can wipe off his tears in $100 bills.
That's right. But I think even more exciting.
He can wipe off his tears in kick-ass money.
Yeah, kick-ass money. Limbo #1, though, that seems interesting. A detective with no memory, no identity, and no manners, a femme fatale seeking escape from a powerful crime lord, a voodoo queen with a penchant for mixtapes and hip high tops, a goat-eating TV. Welcome to Didonda City, where good people check under their beds at night and reality is never quite what it seems. A new surreal neo-noir series crossing 50s pulp with 80s VHS visual aesthetic, drawing from the likes of Carpenter, Cronenberg, and Lynch.
Now, does your text say neo-noir or neon noir?
Oh, I'm sorry, neon noir. I misread.
I was just wondering about that because there are a couple typos in the text I'm looking at, so I wasn't quite sure if that neon noir was the word that I had.
No,
that you had.
You're right. It's neon noir. Now, this looks interesting, but what doesn't help in the catalog is, okay, with some of their #1 titles, or their new series, their #1 issues, you will have, let's say, 3 pages of sample art, and on each page you will have a representative single page from what will be that first issue. With other #1 titles, what they'll do is they'll condense, let's say, 4 pages onto one. Sometimes that works. It does not work for Limbo #1 because on page 199, I'm looking at the 4-page sample. All 4 pages are placed together on one page of the catalog. And there's quite a bit of text here. It is so small that I would have to either take out a magnifying glass or, my eyes not being what they were when I was younger, take off my glasses and hold my face really close to the page.
Okay.
So that kind of pisses me off. But
it pisses you off, but just imagine if you had none of that. Just imagine being me right now.
Okay, that's right. You have it worse for this episode. It's all coming back to you. I'm no matter what may upset me about this month's catalog or irritate me or disappoint me, I can't be as bad off as you are, I guess.
Yeah. Let's see. I did have a couple things that I wanted to mention in Image, and I have no idea what pages these things are on.
Okay. Shoot.
So one other #1 that I did want to highlight is, and I again, like I said, don't know where this is, so I don't even know if I can find it in my own text. It is Ringside #1.
Yes, that's on 216.
Okay, by Joe Keating and with art by Nick Barber and Simon Gu. The professional wrestling epic begins in an oversized first issue. Ringside is an ongoing series set within the world of professional wrestling. So there's the wrestling angle coming back again. I really like Joe Keating as a writer too. So I like what he did on Glory. I've liked the kind of limited things he has done at Marvel, for example. So and I like wrestling as a comic subject, and this is being compared to The Wire in terms of interconnected rotating perspectives.
Yeah.
So that is a neat idea. So I think of the Image stuff in this issue, the Goddamn probably has the highest profile, but Ringside is the one I'm going to be really curious about.
Yeah, I'm curious about this one as well, although I have to say I wasn't overly thrilled with Keating's last, I guess it was his last series, or more recent series with Image, and that's Shudder.
Yeah, I haven't actually read that yet, so.
Yeah. It's okay.
But the only other thing I wanted to mention in Image, and I have no idea what page this is on, but that it is, and it isn't a number 1, but that Nowhere Men is coming back.
Oh God, where did I miss this?
Or maybe it's on mine and it's not in yours, because I have a question mark sitting next to it, because I could not find any page number for it.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that I would have noticed that going through the Image section, and I do not recall anything like that.
That is weird then, because I'm looking basically at a text file that retailers get.
Huh.
And it says Nowhere Men number 7.
Jeez. Now that's big news. That's almost like burying the lead.
Yeah. And so I may have something here. I don't know. So, because it does say that, story by Eric Stevenson, but the art is not by Nate Bellegarde. The art is by Dave Taylor, Emmy Lennox. So, I don't know. And then it also says that, that the second story arc is going to ship monthly through April 2016. So you don't have that information. I do. I don't know if then that means that maybe Image at the last minute pulled that.
Huh. Well, maybe it has turned out to be a blessing that you didn't get a copy of previews, because then you relied on the secondary sources, and there may be some news in there somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, so, 2 pieces of news in that, or 3 maybe even, that, maybe Nowhere Men's coming back. If it's coming back, it's not with Nate Bellegarde, which is, I think, very interesting, because I thought that he had done at least some of issue 7.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's well documented, the personal issues that Nate went through following the success of the first 6 issues of Nowhere Men. But that Eric Stevenson has gone ahead and replaced him, and that it's going to come out monthly. So, well, if our listeners know anything about what's going on with that, maybe they can
get in touch with us and let us know something.
Yeah, because that's interesting, because when I tried to correlate my notes with the previews order form, I saw that that wasn't in there.
Well, I only have 2 other relatively quick things to mention in the Image section. I don't know if you have anything else.
I'm done.
Okay. On pages 222 and 223, these are collections. Well, on 223, it is the Dead at 17, the complete collection, and this is a trade paperback. So if you have enjoyed Josh Howard's Dead at 17 series over the past several years, the various storylines, apparently they're going to pull all of them together in one trade paperback. And that's going to be $49.98 retail. So that pulls together volumes 1 through 7. And so this has been going on for a while. It's about time that they pull all this together in one volume. But on page 222, this is the latest in Image's hardcover premiere editions, Black Science. And, I know I've mentioned this on several other episodes. There's something I like about what Image is doing with their hardbound edition, and something that's a little irritating about it. For instance, with some of these titles that I really like, such as Black Science, had I known, or had I been thoughtful enough to suspect that they would eventually come out with a premier hardcover edition, I wouldn't have got the individual trades. Because I got some, not all, of the individual original issues of Black Science, but then I decided to switch to trades. You know, but they were doing this last month with Southern Bastards and with Rat Queens, and they're doing this with other titles of theirs. So this seems to be a new normal now with Image. This seems to be a strategy that they're following. And so, you know, if you're someone who waits for a trade or you prefer to wait for a hardbound deluxe edition, then order accordingly.
Yeah, but I picked up the first Black Science trade because it's like $10, and so that's what and they seem to be doing. That seems to also be the norm.
Yep.
At Image, so I'm more willing to experiment like that than I would be to wait for a big hardcover collection to come out.
So that's all I had in Image, and unless there is something that you have in Marvel.
No, I'd go to Abrams.
Yep. And I'm sure you and I are looking at the same two issues, or same two solicits.
Yeah. So Abrams Comic Arts on page 244, is that right? Yeah, so we've got Trashed by Derf Back Derf. Which is his memoir of working as a trash collector. It follows the raucous escapades of three 20-something friends as they clean the streets of pile after pile of stinking garbage while battling annoying small-town bureaucrats, bizarre townfolk, sweltering summer heat, and frigid winter storms. But Derf himself had worked as a trash collector at one time in his youth. Before starting at Ohio State, actually. So I don't know then if this is actually a memoir or if it's just based on that experience.
Yeah, it's probably informed by his experiences. Because it says in the solicit, Trashed is inspired by Derf's own experiences as a garbage man.
That does not say that in what I'm looking at.
Okay. And then after that, interspersed are nonfiction pages that detail what our garbage is and where it goes.
Oh, that sounds good. And I think that bizarre townfolk being a phrase that appears in a Derf Back Derf solicit. You can probably picture what those guys are going to look like. Their heads are going to be completely sideways on top of their necks.
That's right, 90 degrees.
Yeah. And I don't know if you follow Derf on Facebook at all.
I'm friends with him now.
Yeah.
But I don't follow most of the people that keep up with most of the people I'm friends with.
He has been pretty consistently posting about the progress of this book. So I think of the books in this issue of previews, let alone of the books that are coming out, in the fall or early winter, this is probably the one I'm most excited about.
Yeah. We love Derf Back Derf.
Yep.
And then the other thing that's solicited in the Abram Comics Art section is Paul Levitt's Will Eisner, Champion of the Graphic Novel. And this is, interesting on a number of levels. Levitz was the one who was DC editor when he was the driving force behind the Spirit Archives.
Right.
Had it been purely or mostly an economic decision of whether or not to come out with, much less continue, the Spirit Archives all the way to the end, I don't know if it would have been completed. Levitz, this was, from what I understand, kind of a passion of his.
Right.
So he helped bring those about. So I guess it only makes sense that he pulls together this book that's going to be coming out from Abram Comics Art. And this is going to be 224 pages. Now, you can't see it because you don't have the catalog, but on pages 242 and 243, there's a 2-page spread that brings more images, more information, and then a brief interview with Paul Levitz about this new Eisner book. So,
I would like to have seen that.
Yeah, and like I said, the interview is short. J.C. Vaughn does it with Paul Levitz, but about why he's doing this and what was going on with him and pulling everything together, some of the challenges. Like I said, a quick in and out interview, but this looks exciting. I think that this would be something really good to discuss in a future episode.
It would be. I'm curious to see it because I corresponded with Paul Levitz towards the end of his composition on that book.
Oh, really?
Yes.
About Eisner or about
Eisner?
Else?
Yes.
Oh, really?
No, about the stuff I had been working on with Eisner and the graphic novel. I don't know if any of that is made it into the book or not, but I'm going to see it anyway because I will pretty much read anything that comes out about Will Eisner. Mm-hmm. But So anyway, so that also means I have his contact information. So.
Oh, cool. Maybe we can have him on the show to talk about this.
Yes.
Maybe he mentions you in the book.
Well, I don't want to go that far to speculate on that being a possibility that I get cited in the book. I hope I do.
This guy from USC Sumter, he kept bothering me with questions.
Some guy would not shut up about this footnote.
Oh, is it something that you've talked about with me about before?
I don't know.
About the graphic novel designation and Jack.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be cool. So that's something I'm very much looking forward to. So after Abrams, I don't have anything until Alternative Comics.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is on page 220 or 255. And now that Alternative Comics has that distribution agreement with a number of other smaller presses like Hick and Hawk, Study Group, and whatnot, it's hard to tell which of these titles are coming out from what publishers, but they're all being distributed. If they're distributed by Alternative Comics, then they come under the Alternative Comics heading in the catalog. Mm-hmm. One thing on that page is an anthology, Alternative Comics Are Dead. This is Alternative Comics' flagship anthology, and I didn't know that it was. I didn't. Okay, I thought, and I'm assuming that their flagship anthology is Alternative Comics, but not Alternative Comics Are Dead.
So, but maybe it's just Alternative Comics and then Are Dead kind of as the subtitle.
That's what I'm thinking. Thinking. So, and it's been quite a while since we've had, maybe at least 2 years, I think, since we had the last issue of Alternative Comics Anthology. Mm-hmm. This one has work by Anders Nilsson, Noah Van Sciver, Leslie Stein, Helen Joe, and Charles Forsman. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And then we have also on that page issue number 2 of Ted May's Men's Feelings. And it hadn't been that long, I think, since issue number 1 came out. Jason Fisher has Seconds Helping, a Drawing Assistant's Memoir one-shot. Mm-hmm. And Jason Fisher was, I guess, an assistant artist who worked with Brian Lee O'Malley on Seconds. And this is a one-shot memoir about that experience.
Yeah, I think of the things listed under Alternative Comics, that one looks the coolest.
It is, and the cover, I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
But it does have a very similar look to the cover of Seconds, the same kind of font, the same red background on the cover. So that's interesting. To me, though, one thing that sounds even more interesting, I guess, of all the solicits here in the Alternative Comics section is by a new artist, Carlos Gonzalez, and this is called Test Tube.
Yeah.
It says, Test Tube follows 3 people living in a faceless city of decrepit movie theaters, girly nightclubs, and paper-thin apartment buildings. Within that stew, they are exposed to strange photographs, statues, cardboard cutouts, and sexual mania. Their destinies converge, revealing an ambitious plot to accelerate human evolution. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting premise.
Yep.
So, that's one of the really good things to come from this new distribution agreement with that Alternative Comics has with the other smaller presses, and that is every month there are 2 or more really interesting titles coming out from Alternative Comics or through Alternative Comics.
Yes. It really ups the profile of Alternative Comics as well.
It does. And we are going to have publisher spotlights on Alternative Comics and or some of these smaller presses as well. We already had one on Hang Dai Editions.
Right.
But we just still need to iron out a few things to see when those other shows are going to come out.
Well, it makes me, I think, a little more aware of some of these series, too, to see them, or excuse me, some of these books, to see them together in the catalog rather than maybe spread out in different places. Oh,
yeah, I agree. And also making me aware of some of these publishers. I mean, I knew of Hick and Hawk before, but I didn't really pay it much attention until this agreement, and now I'm very attuned to Hick and Hawk releases, or more than I was before.
Right.
Okay, I go next to page 259. I don't know if you have anything before that.
I don't have anything until Boom, so whatever you have.
Okay. Amulet Books, this is on page 259, and Amulet Books, I think, is an imprint of Abrams as well. This is the next book in Barry Deutsch's Hereville series. This is Hereville, How Mirka Caught a Fish. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the Hereville series?
No.
I think they're really good books. They're for younger readers, and Hereville is this mythical community of Hasidics, and Mirka is a young kind of teenager, and she has a series of adventures, or at least as much of a series as the first 2 books would allow, and they're fun. They're engaging, and I've been wondering when the 3rd Hereville book will come out, but now we have our answer. And I would be tempted to say that we could discuss this on a future show, but I'm pretty sure that something else that'll be coming up soon is going to want to take on this book. And I don't want to give anything away on air about this yet.
Okay.
But anyway, that's something that I'm looking forward to, Deutsch's Hereville, How Mirka Caught a Fish.
Okay.
And then you say you don't have anything before Boom.
Yeah.
One thing worth noting in this next issue of Archie that's solicited, this is number 4, Jaime Hernandez does one of the covers.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to get the Hernandez cover.
That makes some sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep, especially since his art especially is, much more so than his brother, is influenced by Archie. On page 280, Benjamin Rivers. I have not heard of them as a publisher. Have you?
No.
Benjamin River Inc. or Rivers Inc. But under their one solicit on page 280 is a graphic novel, Snow, and I'm guessing that, well, okay, the artist is Benjamin Rivers. Duh. I didn't even pay attention to that, so I guess he's self-published. It says, Snow is a Joe Shuster Award-nominated graphic novel about Dana, a serious, young 20-something dealing with serious changes to her downtown Toronto neighborhood. I guess she's serious. Its clean, black and white art highlights the book's dramatic story of personal growth and change as Dana deals with both losing her job and her obsession with a local tragedy. This complete edition includes a glossy insert featuring stills from the prize-winning film adaptation, I'm not aware of that, as well as bonus content to invite readers further into the real-life, parenthetically, world of Snow. So I had not heard of this before, but apparently Snow has a backstory to it.
Yeah.
Had you
I'm
heard
not
of this?
familiar with. No, I wasn't familiar with it either.
No. Okay, so now Boom.
Mm-hmm.
What in Boom tickled your fancy?
The only thing I have in Boom is Klaus #1 by Grant Morrison with art by Dan Mora, which is basically Grant Morrison doing Santa Claus Year One.
Yeah.
I also, Morrison taking basically all the legends and stories surrounding Santa Claus and bringing them all together into this. Like I said, I can't see what the preview stuff looks like for this, so I'm just guessing. But I think Grant Morrison Santa Claus, I think, is something that I never thought I would see, but I definitely want to now.
Yeah, that was similar to last month with Garth Ennis and Romance.
Yeah, that's
being
true.
an unlikely combination.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd marked that as a title in Boom that I was interested in, and I'm not going to get this, but I think it's worth noting because for many people, Lumberjanes is like, one of the biggest titles in the past year or year and a half. Mm-hmm. And on page 289, we get the first hardcover collection, Lumberjanes to the Max Edition, Volume 1. Mm-hmm. And this is going to collect, I think, the first 8 issues of Lumberjanes, along with a never-before-collected Lumberjane short from Boombox 2014 mixtape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, this is a popular title, so why not come out with a hardbound edition of this? Although, the fact that this has, in essence, just 8 issues, or maybe 8.5, really, if with that, mixtape story collected, you'd think if the hardbound, there would be more than 8 issues, but then again, with that first trade that we discussed several months back, I think that was only the first 4 issues.
Right.
So I guess in that sense it makes sense. It's just, if this is a hardcover, come on, include more issues. But maybe the story layout didn't warrant that.
Okay. Did I say so? I think I just said, "Oh man," under my breath.
You said, "Oh man." Was that a reaction to what I was saying?
Yeah. Okay. Complain. You have more stuff to complain about? Or can
well, actually, I was going to complain about something else regarding Lumberjanes, but I'll let it go. Because I got that old man reaction.
You are the man who hates Lumberjanes.
No, I don't hate Lumberjanes. We've been over this before. I like Lumberjanes. When we reviewed it several months back, I enjoyed the story. It's just, I think that the attention that it's getting, I don't see. I like it. I just don't like it as much as a lot of other people do.
Well, and it's a good thing, though, that there are more than enough comics targeted to your demographic so that when a comic like Lumberjanes is targeted to a demographic that is largely otherwise underrepresented in comics, you don't have to like it. Because you can find a comic that you like.
I understand where you're going here. But I think that because, and I agree with you, and I think Lumberjanes does reach a demographic or demographics that aren't traditionally reached in comics, and I applaud that. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that fact is one of the reasons why Lumberjanes is becoming overhyped for this very reason. Now, is it an undeserving overhype? I don't know. I think maybe I have my suspicions. I just don't think it's as big of a deal as some people seem to think it is. But again, maybe I'm just being the contrarian that I usually am in certain things, regardless of demographics.
I like bringing up your hatred for Lumberjanes because you just keep digging. You keep just digging yourself further and further into the hole.
It's not hatred. It's critical appreciation.
I like continuing to bring up the fact that you regularly wipe your ass with copies of Lumberjanes when you go to the bathroom. Does everybody know that? I thought that was common knowledge to our listeners.
Okay, you weren't supposed to say it on the air. It was the one time I ran out of Charmin, okay?
And you had a Frank Miller book and you had Lumberjanes to choose from.
Well, depending on what Frank Miller book.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, but I think it's good that they're coming out with hardbound editions of Lumberjanes. I just wish it were more than 8.5 issues.
Well, yeah. I mean, that having that first trade be only 4 issues too. I mean, Boom seems to do that every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, Image does too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish what I wish with Boom is that they would be a little quicker in coming out with the Lumberjanes trades because there's a big lag behind the issues.
So now it's your hatred of Lumberjanes that's coming out.
No, I love Lumberjanes. I want more of it more frequently. That's what I'm trying to say.
So you want it more frequently so you can wipe your ass with it.
Yeah, because I'm running out of toilet paper.
Okay.
Okay, anyway.
So that's all I have in Boom.
Yeah, I go to page 303 next. So if you have anything before then,
no.
Again, I can't see this, but I am really curious about under Canton Street Press their Moon Girl #1 replica edition. As this is saying, it's an exact replica of the 1947 comic, including ads and editorial content.
Yep.
And this key issue introduces Moon Girl, who went on to star in 8 issues of the series, fully restored. Now it's $14.99 for this replica edition, so that price is a little steep for 44 pages, but I really like this idea of duplicating the entire comic from 1947, and I'd like to see more of this sort of thing.
I like the idea too, although I wish that the price was more replicated.
Yeah.
Or at least, it wouldn't be the exact same price as the original, but maybe they could up the price to be in line with inflation. That would have been okay. But $14.99, yeah, it is a little pricey. But I'd be curious to see what this looks like.
Yeah, and I would encourage more things like this because I like that. I like the idea. I mean, we've both done the kind of research on these sorts of things. To when I was just at Michigan State, to have in my hand the original comics and to not just be able to read the stories which might get reprinted, Golden Age stories that might get reprinted elsewhere, but to see the letter pages, the ads, and all the things, other ephemera that are in that issue are is an interesting part of the research. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I'd encourage more of this.
Okay, I have something on 306.
Okay, go ahead. I gotta check. I gotta adjust my notes. Okay.
And this is under Comics Mix, and this is Volume 1 of John Ostrander, the aforementioned Ostrander, and Timothy Truman's Grimjack.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of fans of Grimjack out there, and so Comic Mix is bringing back, I guess, the collection of Grimjack. This is Grimjack Omnibus Volume 1. Yeah,
I had this marked too because I loved the Grimjack series when it first came out. I'm gonna get this collection too because even though I have the first 13 issues of Grimjack that are collected in here, I never got the Grimjack backup stories that were in Star Slayer issues 10 through 17 that will be collected in here. So that earliest Grimjack stuff I'm missing.
Cool.
Yep.
And then if you turn the page 308, I don't know if I'm getting it, but this is like, I guess, big news. Warren Ellis's James Bond.
Yeah, I'm absolutely getting this.
You are?
Oh yeah. Not only am I a big James Bond fan anyway, but I've read Warren Ellis's take on James Bond, and he's definitely a fan of the original Ian Fleming version. And so this may be less of a James Bond as he appears in the movies and more consistent with the literary James Bond. And so for that reason, I'm definitely going to be on board with this.
Yeah, well, see, that makes it sound more interesting to me. I mean, the fact that almost anything Warren Ellis does is worth checking out just to see what Warren Ellis is doing. But then when I saw, okay, James Bond, to me, I could take or leave James Bond, at least the films. So, I mean, I like it well enough. It's just I don't go out of my way to consume James Bond narratives. This, though, in the way you described it, it does have me a little more interested.
I would consider myself an avid James Bond fan.
You're a Bondian.
Yes, I guess that's the case. I mean, I've read all the novels, even the later non-Fleming novels, and seen all the movies. And I don't know, read most of the comic books. I know this says something about 20 years, the first James Bond comic in 20 years. I guess means that the last ones were the ones that Eclipse did back in the 90s. There was one that Mike Grell wrote and drew that I really liked, called Permission to Kill. And I'd like to see those come back into print.
Well, maybe after the success of this new series.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have anything in Dynamite.
That's all I have in Dynamite.
I don't have anything until Drawn and Quarterly.
Okay, I wanted to jump to is Dover before Drawn and Quarterly on page 334?
It's the same page.
Okay. This Dover is again doing some very interesting reprint work with older comics, and here they're reprinting Night in the Enemy, which is a graphic novel collection of stories written by Harlan Ellison and drawn by Ken Stacy. Now, this was originally released, it doesn't say this on the solicit, but this was originally released as a large-size album graphic novel by Eclipse or Comico. I can't remember. I don't have my copy handy. It might be Comico or Comico, as some people say, back in the 80s or 90s. And it is a really beautiful book. Ken Stacy's art is just really, really nice. So this does say unavailable for nearly 3 decades. That would put it in the 80s. This tale of the Earth's war with an alien race features a clever framing device, specially written by Ellison, that links the individual stories. And a new introductions by the creators and 6 pages of new artwork. So this is worth checking out. It is one of the kind of rare Harlan Ellison works in comics, but we also don't see much of Ken Stacy's art anymore, and it's really nice in this book.
Dover's been doing this more and more recently, coming out with these reprints of books, graphic novels that were originally published elsewhere, but not for years. Right.
It's an interesting, I don't know, editorial mandate or something that they have to do these things, because what they did that with Mercy, right, recently.
Right. Yeah, just recently.
And then I think there was even something in the last issue of previews that I forgot. But anyway, yeah, I'm glad for that. I bought these when they came out, but those are good books.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Comico. I got it. I found my copy. My copy's really beaten up too.
Well, maybe you can get a new copy now.
Yeah, I read the hell out of that.
Well, also on page 334 is the Drawn and Quarterly section, and there are a few things worth noting here. One is Drawn and Quarterly is coming out with a new edition of Craig Thompson's Blankets.
Yes.
Now, that was originally a top shelf book.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that now Drawn and Quarterly is coming out with this new edition. And I think I looked at it, but I skimmed over the solicit. Do they mention anything about any difference in this new edition? It just says new Drawn and Quarterly edition.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
I would hope that there is at least something in there, maybe a brief essay. Because, this is one of those books, if people aren't familiar with comics or graphic novels, but only know a few, this is one that they may just know. Right.
And I've been thinking a lot about blankets lately for a variety of reasons, but one of those has come up with some of the more, again, what seem to be perennial criticisms, or whatever you want to call them, of Alison Bechdel's Fun Home. This time, finding out that there are students at Duke who refuse to read Fun Home because of its graphic sexual content, right? Mm-hmm. And I wonder if Blankets were to ever achieve the kind of level of cultural penetration where it was used as what I used the word penetration, where it was used as like a first year reading experience book or something like that. Mm-hmm. If it would generate the same level of critique that Fun Home generates, because Fun Home is far from pornographic.
It's not.
There's nothing really that. But the accusations of pornography with Fun Home often do seem to come from a homophobic place, or mostly come from a homophobic place. Whereas Blankets does delve into, sexuality as well, but also deals with, with this, with Thompson's Christian upbringing.
Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, and I don't even think this came up on our recent Teaching Comics episode, but I actually taught in just kind of a general intro to comics where I looked at different genres. I taught Blankets and Fun Home one right after the other.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we read Blankets, and in fact, Blankets was the first comic that we read. I mean, I had them start off with Understanding Comics, but the first real story was Blankets, and then after, and they loved it. They absolutely ate it up. And this was a fall semester course. Even though these were upperclassmen for the most part, they could all remember the experience of getting ready to go off to college or their senior year of high school, so they could relate to the subject matter.
Oh, yeah.
And it really resonated. I mean, no negative word at all on Blankets. Mm-hmm. Then we got to Fun Home, and there was a reason why I paired the two together. Mm-hmm. And I heard mostly negative things about Fun Home. I didn't hear the pornographic criticism, although that was probably there, what some of the students were thinking. But because this was a coming out story, I think that's what a lot of my students didn't like, or maybe they felt a little uncomfortable with for various reasons. And I tried to make the argument that, Blankets in its own way is a coming out story. Basically Blankets is a way that Thompson came out to his family that, he's not the Christian that he was when he, was younger. And both of them, both Blankets and Fun Home, are coming of age stories of discovery, dealing with characters who are roughly around the same age, or at least not that different in age.
Right.
But everyone loved Blankets. Not that many people liked Fun Home. So from my own teaching experience, Yeah, I can see where those criticisms are. I'd like to do that again, but to first teach Fun Home and then teach Blankets, if I'm going to pair the two.
That's interesting, because then you could just, when the students say, this is pornographic, I don't like this, and then they get to Blankets and they say, oh, we love this. You can just lay into them for their hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd get me some great teaching evaluations. But no, that's solicited on page 334. Also, Puke Force by Brian Chippendale is also solicited. So this is a new work from Chippendale coming out from Drawn and Quarterly, and he's got kind of a wild experimental style.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that. But what I'm really looking forward to is Suguru Mizuki's Hitler. And it's not often that I say or even hear people say that I'm looking forward to a new narrative devoted to Adolf Hitler. But this is one that I'm looking forward to on multiple levels. One, I like the work of Mizuki. Drawn and Quarterly just recently finished up the Showa series, which is quite an achievement. And now they're coming out with the Mizuki's Hitler. Another reason why I'm excited about this is I think that Shay and I, for a future, maybe December's manga episode, we're going to pair this one with Tezuka's Adolf.
Oh, good.
And just, see what's going on there. But yeah, Drawn and Quarterly coming out with some really good stuff. And as they usually do, they're resoliciting some of the creators who have new works coming out. So the previous Showa, A History of Japan books are coming out or being resolicited. So if you didn't get them the first time, now's your opportunity to order them.
Yeah.
Before Fantagraphics, there is something on page 339 that I wanted to point out. I don't know if you had marked this as well.
I think I have two things on 339 if I'm looking at my notes correctly.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I have is Editions to Nebus on 339?
Yes.
So they are putting out Paul Kirshner's The Bus 2 hardcover, which is basically, I guess, newer bus strips from underground artist Paul Kirshner, who had originally done the Bus series between 1974 and 1986. And so these were originally published in France a couple of years ago, but now they're getting their publication in the States. So it's always cool to see these creators from that era of comics history getting a comeback and reviving the work they did back then. And that's the one thing. And then I guess I had something under Farrar Straus Giroux.
Right, Dare to Disappoint.
Yeah, Giroux, excuse me.
Yeah, growing up in Turkey. This is Özge Samaki. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. But I guess this is a memoir. Yes, graphic memoir. Growing up on the Aegean coast, Özge loved the sea and imagined a life of adventure while her parents and society demanded predictability. Her dad expected Özge to become an engineer. She tried to hear her own voice over his and the religious and militaristic tensions of Turkey and the conflicts between the secularism and fundamentalism. Could she be a scuba diver like Jacques Cousteau, a stage actress? Would it be possible to please everyone, including herself? In her graphic memoir, Özge recounts her story using inventive collages, weaving together images of sea, politics, science, and friendship.
Yep.
And, you and I have talked off air, so to speak, about the possibility of either later this year or early next year doing a special theme-based show of recent memoir and autobiography in comics.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it. It just keeps pouring out every month.
Yeah. So it better slow down if we want to contain it.
Yeah.
But this is another one that would definitely qualify for that.
Yep.
Okay, and then if you turn the page, we get to the Fantagraphics section.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, there's not as much in this month's Fantagraphics part of the catalog that I'm as excited about, or that at least I'm going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, there's the ongoing Hip Hop Family Tree, that experiment. So, I mean, there's that. There's the Uncle Scrooge collections, that kind of stuff, the Peanuts.
And Gilbert Hernandez's Blubber #2.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, of the solicits on page 340 and 341 in the Fantagraphics section, Blubber and Zap Comics #16 are the only ones that I'm marking as probably going to get.
Yeah, yeah.
When you and I recorded our Patreon supplement that only our Patreon supporters of at least $15 a month get to listen to, I'd mentioned that I had recently read Blubber #1, which is experimental surreal porn.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just got a copy, but I haven't read it yet.
Okay. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm sure that Blubber #2 will be in the same mold.
Mm-hmm.
A naked superwoman must find a secret lost artifact in order for the Blubber strip club to continue in business. A priest and his colleagues hunt down zombies. Over-the-top violence and explicit sex take us to a place where most comics fear to go. I buy that, having read issue #1.
Okay.
And speaking of over-the-top, that other title is Zap Comics #16. This is the final issue of Zap that was included in the complete Zap Comics boxed set that came out last year. Was it last year or early this year?
I can't remember.
Recently. Relatively recently, within the past year. I just know that the boxed set of Zap Comics is a price that is beyond me. But anyway, included in that is the very last issue of Zap, and now you can get it by itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good that they're doing that.
Yeah. Give the rest of us a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go next in the catalog?
I don't have anything till Self-Made Hero on 387.
Okay, so Self-Made Hero.
So if you have anything before that.
Well, one of the things before that is in the Oni section. This is on page 381. The Tooth. I did not know about The Tooth. This is written by Colin Bunn with art by Matt Kent, and Sean Lee with art by Matt Kent. Mm-hmm. Did you know about this?
Oh, it's been around for a while. This is a very, very early book that they did.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Yep.
So apparently this collects all of The Tooth, and it looks interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, if you ever, I don't know if he still does this, but if you ever get The Tooth from Matt Kent at a convention, which he still sells copies of it there, he will often mutilate it for you in the ways that he likes to mutilate books that you buy.
Like red-handed?
He doesn't light it on fire, but there's a little, there's a place in the book where there's a nameplate or something that says, this book belongs to, and he will cut that out and put it in the front of the book.
Oh, wow.
I think that's what he does. I know he cuts something out from somewhere in the book and puts it in the front.
See, when he was at Heroes Con, I do not remember seeing The Tooth there on his table.
Yeah, it's there. It's an odd looking book.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it looks odd on page 381.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Self-Made Hero on 387.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this book, Edward Ross's Filmish, A Graphic Journal Through Film, Looks really, really interesting. I'm really wanting to see this to see if this could function as a textbook for a film class.
I was wondering the same thing.
Because as it says, each chapter zooms into a particular theme, the body, architecture, language, and explores an eclectic mix of cinematic triumphs from A Trip to the Moon to Rambo.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be getting that book. Whether it maybe becomes a part of my curriculum is another story.
Well, check it out and see. You know, on the page right before that, published by Riverhead, is a title that the title itself intrigues me and potentially frightens me. It's called City of Clowns.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what grabbed my attention. But then I read the solicit, and it does seem interesting. Now, this is written by Daniel Elecron with art by Sheila Alvarado. Oscar Chino Irby, I guess that's the name of the character, is a young Peruvian journalist for a local paper. After the recent death of his philandering father, he must confront the idea of his father's other family and how much of his own identity has been shaped by his father's murky morals. At the same time, he begins to chronicle the life of street clowns, sad characters who populate the violent and corrupt city streets of Lima, and is drawn into their haunting, fantastical world. Okay, there are two things that are going on in the solicit, okay? There's the thing with Oscar and his father, realizing that his father had another family, and then there's the chronicling of street clowns. And so I'm intrigued. I've got to see how these two things mash up.
Okay.
So that does seem like an interesting title. After that, I go to 411.
Okay, I have a couple things before we get there.
Sure.
On page 389 is Stranger Comics, a publisher that's putting out Niobe, She Is Life. I don't have a picture of this, so I'm not seeing this, but this is a book that's getting a little bit of attention outside, or a little bit of attention in the kind of comics news, because I think Ashley Woods has recently been hired by Marvel as an artist, and so this Niobe is getting some attention for that too, being a work that offers some representation again from an area that is not only underrepresented in comics, but frequently comics publishers even more are being criticized for their lack of representation. So Niobe from Stranger Comics could be a good alternative to that.
Huh. See, that's interesting. I didn't recognize Stranger Comics, and I guess
I didn't either.
I just kind of overlooked that.
And then on page 405, Sunday Press is putting out another one of their very, very large books. This is a reprint of Garrett Price's comic strip, White Boy in Skull Valley. Mm-hmm. Which Sunday Press books are amazing, and if you get too many of them, you have no room for them in your house. But I like that they're taking these pretty obscure comic strips and finding new life for them.
Because wasn't it Sunday Press that did the Little Nemo?
Yeah,
in Slumberland, yeah.
Yeah, among others things. So you go to 411.
Yeah, 411, Uncivilized. This is another book from Sam Alden. New Construction, Two More Stories. A collection of 2 stories from cartoonist and Adventure Time contributor Sam Alden. In Household, a brother and sister deal with divergent memories of their father and grow closer than ever. In Backyard, vegans and anarchists share a house. Small dramas and bizarre transformations, featuring a new, never-before-published ending.
Yeah. I think that if Trashed is the book I'm most excited about in this issue of previews, this is probably the second. Mm-hmm. Because I am, after the last few things of Sam Alden's I've read, I've really, really appreciated his work, and he's one of my favorite young creators right now.
Mm-hmm. on page 422. Do you have anything before then?
Nope, that's what I have too.
Okay, Versos, Red Rosa.
Yep.
Yeah. A graphic biography of Rosa Luxemburg by Kate Evans.
Mm-hmm.
So this looks interesting.
Yeah, haven't we recently seen a couple of different graphic biographies of kind of revolutionary figures? Maybe not Rosa Luxemburg herself, but others like her.
I think so, but I'm vaguely remembering a Rosa Luxemburg biography.
That could be
a comics biography. Maybe I'm misremembering, but yeah, I think we're getting over the past 2 or 3 years more of these revolutionary biographies, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And the very last thing I have then is Z2 on page 434.
434. Okay, I have that as well. There are a couple of others, but you go ahead with this one.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Carver, A Paris Story is the one thing I marked, which is the first issue of appears to be an ongoing comic written and drawn by Chris Hunt and Paul Pope. So Z2, they published the Escapo book, right?
Right.
That we talked about on the show. And so the fact that they're doing what looks like a new ongoing series that has at least some involvement from Paul Pope is an interesting idea. Focusing on a globe-trotting and notorious gentleman of fortune, Francis Carver, as he returns to Paris in 1923. This sounds really cool.
It does. So yeah, that's one I definitely want to check out. And these are individual comic book issues, not a book.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's something that I haven't seen Z2 do. If they've done it in the past, I haven't paid attention to it.
Yeah, because they do have Welcome to Showside by Ian McGinty, right? Is that under them?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
and that's in issue number 2.
Okay. So
they've just started doing this, but they're kind of what were they, kind of like a boutique publisher?
I think so, but they're doing. I think they're coming out with more, and also interesting on that same page is they're soliciting Harvey Pekar's Cleveland,
right?
And that originally came out through Top Shelf.
Huh.
So this is yet another Top Shelf book, the earlier one being Blankets, that is now coming back out with another edition from another publisher.
I wonder if that has anything to do with Top Shelf going to IDW.
I don't know. Another thing that I wanted to mention before that, though, and this is in the Viz Media section on page 425, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is the first volume of Part 2, Battle Tendency. Now, a couple of months ago, Shay and I discussed JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the first 2 editions, or the volumes of the hardbound editions, and the third one in that first storyline, I think, is out or is about to come out now. But later this year, the first volume in this next storyline, Battle Tendency, Part 2, is coming out. So I liked JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and so I'm glad to see this coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's all you have in the catalog?
Yep, I'm done.
Yeah, the only other thing I have to mention, there are other things that I marked, but the only thing I wanted to mention, this is in the book section on page 443, and here we have, and they don't have it listed by publisher here, so I'm blanking on the publisher who did that. Who came out with the Paul Levitz DC Comics series? Taschen, that's right. Apparently now they have a new series that I guess is based on this. It's Little Book of Batman Flexicover, Little Book of Superman Flexicover, and Little Book of Wonder Woman Flexicover. It says the little books are a spin-off of the larger DC series, from Taschen, right there in front of me, but focused on one superhero per book. It covers the Golden Age to the Modern Age with a short introduction by Paul Levitz and captions throughout. So, again, I don't know if I'll get this, but it's worth noting.
Okay.
For that. So there we have the September previews catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So quite a number of things there. Not all of which I'll get, but all of it is interesting.
Yep.
And if you want to check out the kind of prices you can find on what we've been discussing and pre-order your copies, it's as easy as going to the website of our sponsor, and that is Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com, and you're going to find incredible specials. Now, the September specials are not up yet, but pretty darn soon you're going to find them. So go to dcbservice.com and see what they have. They'll treat you right. You can't go wrong with those guys. And then after you do pre-order the comics we've just been discussing, get in touch with us and let us know if we're on base. Or maybe we're off base. Or, let me know if I'm being unfair when it comes to Lumberjanes, as apparently some people think I am. You can get in touch with us by going to our website, and on the right-hand side of your browser, you should see a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can send us a message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's very simple and easy to use. Or if you like to hold a phone in your hand, pick it up and dial 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427 and leave us a message.
That's right. Or you can get a hold of us by email. We are 2guys@comicsalternative.com. Or if you want to get a hold of me and tell me that I'm really being too hard on Derek and that Lumberjanes actually does suck, like Derek thinks it does, you can call me or you can email me at Andy@comicsalternative.com.
Right. And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com. I'll let the Lumberjane thing go.
And then we have our Twitter feed where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to our blog. You can find our Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. We're also on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, and on Pinterest. We also have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can also stream us on Stitcher. You can find us as well on TuneIn. And, of course, you can find every single one of our episodes as well as our reviews and our comics-related commentary that we post on our blog. And that's at our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right. All the ways to get a hold of us and find out what we're doing.
That's right. Well, Andy, it's been another hefty preview show. I'm tired. It's time to eat.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah. So until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.